Jason, sir. Dear students, we would be starting our session shortly. Let the students join. यार ये क्या है, चेयर ही नहीं खिसक रही है। हेलो सर। Good afternoon, sir.
Good
Just
afternoon.
yeah, it's good evening in Australia.
Yes, it is. It's 7:30 in the evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir. So we are going to start a session at 3 p.m. Students are still joining.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just let me know when I can start.
Yes, so within 5 minutes we'll start the session.
Thank you.
Yeah, sir.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, how are you, Dolly?
Fine, fine. So the students will be coming in a minute, just a minute.
Thank
Really.
you.
So how was your day today?
Um, yeah, quite busy actually. So good to get onto this call and just do something a little bit different.
Oh,
So I appreciate the offer.
thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem.
Jason, sir, we can start the session now. I think most of the students have joined us. So let's begin the session. So dear students, before sir takes the session, let me give a brief introduction about sir. Dear sir, it's my pleasure to introduce you as a distinguished speaker for today's session. Mr. Jason Lowe is a solution architect at Oracle, Australia. Mr. Lowe has an inspiring career journey that began in late 1990 at a time when the internet was just emerging. Over the years, he has witnessed and adapted to multiple waves of technological disruption while continuing to learn, grow, and stay relevant in an ever changing industry. In his current role at Oracle, he works directly with organizations, empowering them through Oracle Cloud infrastructure and helping them leverage cutting edge technologies to drive innovation and efficiency. Today, students, he will share his insights on a very timely and thought provoking topic, that is, adapting in a world disrupted by AI, an engineer's perspective. Through his talk, he will take us on a journey of understanding how AI is reshaping the way we live, work, communicate, and collaborate, while also highlighting the skills and mindset engineers need to succeed in this new era. So, dear all, please join me in warmly welcoming our distinguished speaker, Mr. Jason Lowe. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here, and thank you for the offer for joining the whole community here. So, um, thank you for sharing those thoughts. And I think some of the things that you just mentioned there, we'll cover over my journey in terms of where my career started, and even some of those significant points of where we've sort of been. So, I know the topic is really around AI, but some of the learnings that I've had stem from those things that I learned, not even just when I was at university, but even those informative years when I first started working. So what I'll do is actually I'll share my screen if you don't mind.
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
Fantastic. So, what I've got, so if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, then by all means do so. I'm happy to connect, and part of that process, and Dolly knows this quite well, is if we got time, if there's a purpose of that connection, then I'm happy to contribute. Admittedly, I do have my day job. I do have a family that I do look after, but if I do have my time, if we do have time, and happy to connect and help in any shape or form. So connect with me on LinkedIn. But as part of this screen and part of my banner is part of who I am in terms of not just the engineering side, but I feel that as part of that journey, understanding what that means as a community is very important. And I say that in a very broad sense. So as a student, someone coming into the college, into this place of learning that you are now, then understanding who are the people within your community, whether it be within your subject, within your course, within the broader campus that you've got. So understanding those connections of people, I find is very important. Um, Finding those connections with people and with their ideas is probably where I lead into the innovation element, where there's this concept of this famous quote, ideas are useless, execution is everything. So great that you might have an idea and you have thoughts about okay what you might do, but admittedly myself in my own journey, there's been plenty of times I've just said, hey, that's a great idea, but I never executed. So as an example, back at uni, my final year project, I thought oh, I why wouldn't I create some wireless earphones so I could plug in there and actually and do that? That could have been the what kicked off Bluetooth. That could have been a thing that I could have got myself into. But those are the opportunities that you need to take. Those are the opportunities that you need to grab onto and move forward. Um, but today, I just really want to capture a few highlights as far as what my career looked like through that path, and then really bring that back into the current age around how it's shaped my thinking and how to stay relevant in this space. So, um, back in the 90s, I know in terms of technologies in the 90s, this wasn't necessarily the thing, but I came into an organization called, I'll even just draw it up here. Um, uh, so I was actually doing my final year project with an organization called Bay Technologies. And what they did was really consulting in technology called Tuxedo. So Tuxedo is very much in the C++ phase. And that's when I was at uni, that's the technology, that was the language. I learned a bit of Java, but within that space, I'll and within this organization, I'll learn a lot around this Tuxedo product. Now, Tuxedo, um, if you think about ATMs, if you think about FPOS, if you think about um, airlines and reservation systems, much of that technology um, is based upon, and a lot of that still is using technology like Tuxedo, which we call, which is great for technology, is called online transaction processing. So online transaction processing is high speed financial systems, high speed transactions. Um, I've worked with banks. I've worked with energy organizations. I've worked with some large construction organizations using this technology. And where the mainframe sort of kicked in is not necessarily um, this technology unto itself, was actually going backwards. So it gave me an opportunity to uniquely learn a technology that I hadn't learned at university. So in this project, I had this great opportunity to learn about technologies like TN3270. So when we're talking about mainframes, TN3270 is what the green screens technology showed when you had um, pretty much an 80 by 24 sets of characters displayed on a screen. And TN3070 is the protocol that allowed me to communicate with the mainframe. Now, by chance and by luck, I think that's part of the connections, and I'll get to that as well, is that on this project, I learnt how to combine Tuxedo, combine connecting into these mainframe systems. But the one unique thing that I took advantage of, um, now I might necessarily we might do this as a poll or as part of a raising hands, but one of the things I learned from that led to me doing things such as robotic process automation. Now, if anyone actually understands what that means, raise your hand, put a heart or put an emoji there. But robotic process automation is very much been a technology of, let's say, the 2015s to 2020s, where it still is used now, but very much used to drive automation tools on desktops. So if you've got spreadsheets, you've got these screens that you need to do, but you want to automate that process and automate the clicks and automate the use of putting text into boxes on web screens and automate that with a single click. Robotic process automation is the technology that people have used. Now, I say that now, but back in so this is putting the timeframes on it. Back in 1996, I was doing robotic process automation using Tuxedo and commands in Tuxedo to then drive screens on these TN3270s. So what I learned from this one here is that interesting ideas and interesting thoughts doesn't have to be based upon the technology that you see here. Is actually probably using, and back then to do this robotic process automation, I was using things, I was using things such as Visual Builder, Visual VB Studio, all right, so Microsoft tools. So, and then building screens to build out how do I actually create these different steps and create these ways to automate these screens. Um, so there's a lot of techniques I learned even back then that I'll look at now and say, hey, that's just new technology. I know how to work with different problems. So it was a great learning opportunity, great place where I learned different techniques, but also I wasn't hamstrung in terms of how do I just code, but how do I do this in a very different way? So probably the other thing that I sort of move into, and this is something that's I'm now skipping to uh it past 2000, past the Y2K, that kind of stuff, probably in 2000, now 2004. Now 2004, even from them, was actually very different. Um, Java was quite big. And I first actually looked at Java in 1998, not in 2004. Um, there was a lot of things that was developed in Java. And at that point in time, I worked for an organization called BEA, and one of their products was WebLogic Server. And WebLogic Server was actually not just a Java application, but actually there's standards around J2EE standards that actually talked about there. Now, when I look at standards, things like how do web services work? How do JSON, how do you do REST APIs? How do you specify APIs nowadays with open API specifications or Swagger API specifications? A lot of that had standards around web services, so web services specs. So things such as W3C, right? So being able to, as an organization, as a consortium, being able to specify specifications, even things like HTML, as even things such as FTP, HTTP are all based upon standards. So being able to work with standards, I definitely found it in this part of my journey, standards and industry standards become quite useful to not just learn about a single technology, but how do you translate that to other technologies or technology stacks, but with those standards. So the thing that I learned in the space, and I think this is where doing this kind of work actually made lot of sense. Back then, to deliver things at speed was, I would say, quite hard. But what I found was this fantastic opportunity where I worked in a utilities organization. They were doing a massive digital transformation on their business. And I was the team lead for their integration team. So typically in that space, you've got different solutions off to the sides, and then one of the things with these solutions, then you would typically need to integrate these things in different ways. So my team, so there were about 6 people in that team, where typically the way that they communicate was actually there was a lot of business analysis done, there was a lot of process engineering that was done, and typically the specifications that we got there was typically the last thing that was documented because it was the you figured out what was in the applications and then you did the integration. Now, the nicety that I had with 6 people, I knew 3 or 4 of these people from my previous engagements that we all came together in this one team where I would have to say within that team we were highly skilled, but we were also adventurous in terms of what we wanted to do because we found fun in terms of doing interesting things. So as part of this process, and as part of what we found ourselves doing, is because we were managing this in a lot of complexity, the thing that we found ourselves doing, we were very smart at being lazy. So what I mean by that is what we found ourselves doing is when we had this framework, so WebLogic and enterprise this enterprise application integration framework that we had to build on, there were a couple of different problems that we needed to do. So in this team, we didn't just have smart people. We had people that were new to the technology, new to the industry. They knew how to code, but they weren't necessarily um, geared to actually be able to write at a high standard. So what we did was actually create this developer framework that was based upon automation, that was based upon ability to almost like bootstrap, but also it was based upon a testing framework. So be able to test whether you were able to be completed. So these documents turning into the ability to understand when you were complete. So how do we know that this piece of code did exactly what was in the specification? So as part of the testing was not just testing the code, but also having data sets that allowed us to know that for all the different variations of tests that were coming through the system, that we knew what was actually happening. Now, if I look at these things about automation or bootstrapping or testing, this is where I now start looking at this is the modern day term of DevOps. So how do we actually provide a framework such that developers can do things at speed, but also the other thing that we put into here was source code control, so code versioning. So how do we put this in code? How do we version our code? How do we release our code? How do we know that through these tests that we've actually been completed? One of the things that happened over this period of time was that we were able to test at speed and produce these PDF documents of all our tests. So we had at the end probably about 120 different interfaces that we were actually executing. And each one of those tests, each one of those interfaces, we probably had about 30 or 40 different tests. And each time that we released code, it would run the full suite of tests across the full code base that we had. Not just what that developer did, but across everyone's code. And every time it did that, it created this PDF document that our project manager could take to the weekly meeting to say, hey, this is what the integration team delivered. This is where they're at. And this is how much they had left to go. So what that allowed me to look at is, hey, if we know we're gone at this far, gone to this level, and we've got this left to do, then it gave me comfort that based upon the quality of our code, that we know how much time we need, we knew what to plan for, and also we knew the areas that not just the people that have been developing for like 10, 15 years, but the people that are graduates were able to come through, we were able to support them as well to be as effective as someone that was 20 years in development. So that really gave me a lot of learnings around DevOps, which now, if we're looking at new age around cloud native, if we look at things like machine learning and ML ops, if we look at AI ops as another thing, and even now we're looking at cloud and this whole operational view around not just the code that we deliver, but FinOps, being able to deliver uh, cloud, do it sustainably, deliver code, but also map that back into where business needs to understand their total cost of ownership and their return on investment around that technology. So FinOps is quite a big thing nowadays. So even this actually is something that a friend of mine has actually turned this into the six key things of development, of software development. And this kind of as a process is not just what I take to market, but also into startups and into scale ups in terms of how do they deliver code at a rapid pace. So something that we've learned even back in 2004 that I still apply 20 years down the track. Now, 20 years down the track, that's a long, long time ago, but probably more recent now when I think about how we learn and how we engage. Probably something that around about the 2008 and 2009 timeframe. Um, I now look at fast forward to around about 2016. So 2016 for me is around about the time that I start looking at public cloud. So Oracle cloud infrastructure in terms of public cloud infrastructure being able to deliver not just compute infrastructure code, but also integration platforms, analytics platforms, AI platforms, data warehousing platforms, all those kind of cloud services in one platform is where I'm sort of working now. But what I found probably around about 2016 is um, it gave me time within this organization um, that I was able to even get long service leave. So as part of that long service leave, I chose to take 5 weeks off. And within that space, um, I was able to connect in with some friends of mine that worked at a startup hub in Brisbane called RCL, so Riverseed Labs. So as part of that space and being able to spend some time with startups, spend time with some of the mentors in that space, and then really embrace not just hackathons, but startup mindset. And that led me to books like um, where books and different models around, let's say, ready, fire, aim. So that being a meaning that you don't necessarily go off and plan everything to the full extent, but if you can actually, from a single point, if you know your North Star is going this way, but what you do is take your shot, say, we'll aim for here, and we'll go for that, we'll fire, and we'll aim for there. But once we get to that point, if you know that you need to change, your North Star may actually change to over here. So instead of going over here, you come over here. So what you do is prepare, you take that, you fire, and then you aim again. So by that time, if you do this over and over again, what you're doing, you're being very efficient in terms of handling different scenarios that change. So this is where I start looking at and being engaged with hackathons, different models around design thinking, um, and to some extent, this ready fire aim method is where I start looking at if I do this loop around design thinking and design thinking as a process, I'm not just looking at a a problem I want to solve, or a solution that I have, but take it from a data perspective. Because when I do that, and if I actually go through a dev cycle and deliver something to market, which has data in it that actually captures the questions and hypotheses here, what I then do is end up in a point where I then start analyzing that. So in a lot of the ways I analyze data, I start using things such as visualization. I start using things such as data science. I start using things such as machine learning, but not necessarily as a product, but to come back here to understand whether I'm actually solving a problem I've actually initially started off with through my design thinking process. So this becomes a quite interesting loop between business and ideas, deliver that through and execute on these things, but then come back with a data science approach to actually understand the problem, really creates a really tight and interesting circle and a circular economy of ideas and trusting what you're doing to actually deliver on that thinking. So hackathons, when I come that as a thing, really accentuates this loop where a hackathon could be something that you spend time thinking about what the problem is. You just don't deliver and say, hey, here's the solution. But how do you know that's viable? So a model that we've sort of seen in this space is a value proposition canvas. So within this value proposition canvas, there's this notion around um, desirability, desirable, feasible, and viable. And really, it's actually the combination. What you want to do is be in that middle. So as a product and as far as a value proposition canvas, you want to make sure that your customers want what you have or what the value proposition you want to deliver on. You also want to make sure that you have all the resources available to you to deliver on that. So the worst thing is that you have sold them that something that they want, but you can't deliver on that. And then the viability comes in is the fact that the if you great that you've got a product that they want, you can deliver on that, but if it's not sustainable, if you can't make money from it, or you can't actually deliver on this such that you can't sustain this as a business, then what's the point? So the value proposition canvas is actually a nice model that I found not just by doing hackathons, but actually doing working with startups, I currently have a relationship with another university where I work with their School of Business. And we do additional innovation hackathon around this kind of model working with students that not just technology or engineers, but people from a business angle, people with a finance background, people with a HR background or a marketing background, but have an element around information systems. So it allows you to, with their perspective, it allows people to consider what's the problem, but also what is the digital solutions that are in play. And taking a value proposition canvas, is this actually worth doing, or is there a different solution that actually can solve that problem, but in a more feasible and more viable motion? So I think this is where I bring this back to AI. So AI as a thing is, yes, it is very attractive when we think about ChatGPT, generative AI, being able to get into AI is quite a disruptive technology. Where I sort of come from with this is AI is definitely something that is in vogue now, but is that going to be something that is going to be in our industry 5, 10 years time? Is there something going to be some other thing that's going to disrupt our industry to get into? So this is where I've got learnings of mainframes and tech and different technologies and solutions I did back in the 1990s that I still apply to this day. So my learning from even just that is great that you got the opportunity, take the opportunity, but don't see that AI is the end goal to be perfect at. There's going to be other opportunities to learn around prompt engineering, context engineering, or even just thinking about design thinking around prompts. How do business people look at prompts? How do business people look at using these technologies? Maybe part of the problem is not AI itself, but potentially solutions that help others use AI. And when we think about AI as an industry is not just building these solutions. There is people doing research around GPUs, NPUs. So there's infrastructure that you can get into. AI itself, you could actually go into research around AI. So if you think about ethics, if you think about guardrails, if you think about um, even just doing AI ops, or even how you invest in AI as an organization, how do you do portfolio management with AI? How do you do projects with AI? All right, there's a lot of research that you could go through. And then you could then AI or AI solutions could be an area where you be more of a developer or a consultant or a business analyst or even doing analytics. All right. So there's plenty of different scopes that you could see AI being a space that you go in. But depending where you are, there's plenty of space where you could take the opportunity to not just learn about AI, but learn how you could be disruptive yourself in terms of the things you learn, the opportunities that you bring forward, the people that you meet, and then also the learnings that you take into the next wave that is beyond AI. So, um, hopefully that's given you a bit of a journey as far as where I've been. Hopefully that showed a couple of the different ways that I learn about my learnings and have taken that on. And I suppose where we are now, especially with the hype of AI, AI is definitely there. I'm doing a lot of work in AI, but as someone that's coming into industry, then I would say from the other aspect is take AI and take the learning and the opportunities to learn more in this kind of space, but don't let that be the one thing. There's plenty of things to learn as you go through. Back to you. So if there's any questions on chat or happy to open that up.
स्टूडेंट एक मिनट यार इसको ऑफ कर रखा होगा ना. Students, you can write your questions in the chat.
That's a very interesting question. So what is that common skill that every big company needs? Yeah, that's so where I work, there's different parts of the organization. So it's not just a single skill. So there's consultants on technology. There's people that sell, so they're more about communication. There's people that actually do a lot of management, but I think a common skill, um, I think it's not necessarily a technology skill, it's actually a collaboration and a communication skill. Being able to also be able to be confident. Confident doesn't necessarily mean arrogant, but I think being able to communicate and collaborate will be one of those skills that will take you far. Um, sorry, I'm just I'm just trying to figure out which ones I should answer. Um, there's a lot of questions in here. Um, cool. Okay, so I'll just try and be with, will AI take jobs of computer science industry or any other industry in particular? Yeah, that's a very, let's say, controversial question, because I think at this point in time, even computer science industry, there are things that may take the role. Now, um, one of the things that I'm looking at the moment is around vibe coding, around different techniques. Now, I don't think computer science is going to take over everything. I think what it will do, similar to things like DevOps to automation, those kind of skills are, are to do those kind of skills on a day in, day out, you don't need to do as much. There's a lot of things that we, I suppose, take for granted in cloud that do I need to be able to build my own compute, or can I use things like Terraform or OpenTofu to actually orchestrate the infrastructure cloud? Right? So, do I need to know everything about building one? Probably not. But in a computer science world, one of the things that is important is actually understanding, even in talking about cloud and computer science as an analogy, I still need to know about compute. I still need to know about memory. I still need to know about the kinds of compute architectures like um, Intel, AMD, ARM 64. I do need to know which one's best for suited kind of workloads. I do need to know about networking and IO operations per second, how performant things are. So skills I learned in the 1990s are still quite relevant in cloud. So when I look at these, take the jobs of CS industry or any industry in particular, I don't think it'll get rid of it entirely, but I think it will transform what it means to have those skills. And what do I think about cloud engineering? I think cloud engineering is an interesting space. That is my role. It is quite varied in the world that I live in. In Oracle, and specifically cloud engineering in Oracle, it is not just about compute, VMs, or cloud native Kubernetes containers. Um, we also look at mission critical systems and working with business applications, across different industries. Uh, we our conversations and cloud engineering is not about infrastructure. It's about, a lot of the times it's about data. It's about business outcomes with data. So in our organization, I won't necessarily talk about other organizations where they see cloud engineering, but cloud engineering is quite varied, and it is quite interesting. As I said when we came through, my day is quite varied, and it's quite busy because of that. Um, what soft skills are important, really important? So collaboration, being able to work with teams, but also communicate across those. Um, how to be efficient with AI. Um, efficient in AI is I think it can be. I think that's the struggle that I find even just talking to some of my customers, uh, where they delve into AI. But one of the concepts that I talked before around is that investing in AI, so the investment portfolio. How do you know that what you do, you can spend a lot of time doing prompt engineering, but is that going to get to your end goal effectively? Right? Are you going to be able to create a better prompt Are you going to be able to create a better agent that does that work? Nowadays, with different ways of model context protocols, MCP servers, agentic AI, even AI platforms as a service, then being efficient in AI could come in many different shapes and forms. So it could be choosing technology, choosing the platform. Could it be a problem that be solved without AI? Because AI, especially the way it works, where ultimately there is uh, a statistical model, a probability model, or even with large language models, not everything is supposed to be perfect. It's based upon something that is creative through what it generates. Then is there probably a more efficient way that doesn't use AI that could be done in a more feasible and more viable fashion? So this is probably where looking at AI, but looking at many different ways that you could actually become look at solving the problem in a different way is probably could be more efficient. What is your take over web development future? Um, what I've seen, especially with vibe coding, also with a lot of the frameworks, what I have found is web development, and even nowadays where you've got other platforms where you're not just building platforms, you're not even doing web development. You could be just doing wireframes which generate a whole website. So I think similar to the conversation before around computer science and web development, I think web development, um, the basic stuff like building a website, a lot of that's been done through not necessarily AI, but with frameworks. So being able to stand up an API, stand up a basic website with React or Node, or even just low code platforms where Oracle's got one with Oracle Apex, where you can build websites without actually codifying that in JavaScript or Go or PHP or even your favorite web tool. Um, you're not even doing that. So I think a lot of the things is more about, yes, the skills will be there to, okay, how do you design a website? How do you design the flows? How do you think about that? How do you apply security? How do you test these things? I think those kind of things um, are still going to be there. You still need to be able to look at that design element, whether you design and use JavaScript to build a website. I think that's still very useful. There's still a lot of frameworks. There's still a lot of tools that people need or currently use, but will that be there 5, 10 years down the track? Maybe, maybe not. Um, there are so many languages and frameworks. Which one should a beginner focus on for web development? Um, yeah, I think that's always going to be an issue. I think frameworks are always going to be there's always going to be a personal favorite, right? So I don't think there's ever going to be the best one. So even nowadays with um, probably if I started looking at more the JavaScript frameworks as of, let's say, 2015, React, AngularJS, Knockout.js, and even the ones that people have built on, um, I think to start off with, it's actually probably better to just pick one and then run with that to learn, not learn about the framework, but learn how to design websites or learn how to deal with state management So when I say state management in a high availability scenario where you've got clusters and you've got a shopping cart. So holding state somewhere where if one of those nodes goes down but still maintains the state of that shopping cart, learning how to do that would be important. Learning how to do security, learning how to do testing, learning how to um, interoperate with uh, a database, how to ship a website, um, do a single change and do CI/CD with a website, continuous integration, continued deployment. Do that not just on a single laptop, but do that across regions. If we're talking about cloud, do one in, so I'm based in Australia, have one in Sydney and do DR to Melbourne, right? So that's web development, right? So that's not necessarily, I think those kind of things are important, not necessarily the framework. And I think look at ways you can extend yourself in um, the framework, but solving problems, not just coding and creating a website. Um, how am I going for time? And how many more questions um, should I answer?
So you can answer one question like, what advice would you like to give to engineering students who are just starting their careers during this phase of massive technological change?
Yeah, great. I think as a summary, then the things that I've learnt over the years that are you need transferable skills. So transferable skills means irrespective of the technology of the day or the project you've got, how can you learn something that you could take to not just the next project using the same technology or same framework or same coding language. But how can you take that to the next 10 projects or a project that you'd never thought about, but 15 years down the track, something that I've learned 15 years ago still could apply in the project that you're in, or even the role that you are, right? So as you're coming through as an engineer, there are plenty of lessons I learned there. I would I I have the same conversation to a CIO, a CTO, a COO, a CFO. There's some lessons I learnt back then I still apply today when not just talking technology, but talking to people in business. So that's definitely where not necessarily take those learnings in even just the way you code, but look at ways and take those lessons and look at those transferable skills that you can take on for the rest of your life.
So, how, as an engineer, you yourself keep adapting to and stay relevant in this AI driven world?
So I've got my I've got my role at Oracle, so as a cloud engineer, I've got my distinct opportunities where I learn about AI in that space. But I think where I take the extra learning opportunity is looking at ways that I can apply that not because I've been told to do something, but there's other areas where I could learn. So if I take an example of what I'm doing with School of Business, I'm actually looking at ways, how does AI fit into business context? That's not something that I've been told to do. That's something that I saw, something that I could learn and do something else to broaden that spectrum around learning about AI. Being able to actually talk to people that do research in AI. So it's not because I do that in my day-to-day job, but I've gone out and found people outside of my organization and actually looking at and talking to people in AI research around AI ethics, about responsible AI, about AI guide rails and different techniques that they've used around machine learning to create new ways of creating guardrails. So even though my role is constrained somewhat with the conversations that my customers and what my organization has, I've actually taken extra opportunity to learn from others outside that and actually bring that into relevant context around something that's a little bit different that is applied to my role. So that's how I try to be different but also stay relevant.
Thank you, sir. Sir, see, AI have changed the entire world. But what are the some industries, according to you, which would be more transformed by AI?
Um, so I think we're still trying to be in it's still very early days in terms of the true disruption of AI. The reason why I say that is there's a lot of discovery around different use cases. So people, because it's very consumer driven, then generative AI and the cost of and doing that, that's where a lot of focus on. So there's people doing, is coding going to disappear? Um, is being able to write resumes going to disappear? Um, is potentially are there um, different roles in HR going to disappear because of that? Now, a lot of that is still to be determined. And one of the things that is still being discovered is how much is the real cost of AI? And I say that being all the progression of models still need to exist in terms of getting better and better. So there's a lot of engineering that needs to go on that. There's also the ongoing cost of data and tuning and inference models that need to exist. So there's a coming back to that value proposition canvas model, the viability of AI solutions to be there day in, day out is still being determined. Now, I see that there's optimizations of what people are doing, but it's still we're still at the we're still at that verge as far as what's really going to happen. Because forget about AI. If we think about jobs around data science, around cybersecurity, around development jobs, it's quite competitive anyway. Adding AI to the mix is is that a market factor or is that a market factor about jobs already that's going to take over those industries, or is AI the disruptor? So I think there's still yet to be determined if AI is going to uh, totally disrupt all these industries I've just mentioned. It will make an impact, but to what extent is still be yet to be determined.
So, one last question. What piece of advice would you like to give to our students who are just starting their career?
Um, I think I think one of the things I do treasure even when I started out, and I still hold this true. Um, you may have this ideology that you want to have this role. I want to be a data scientist. I want to be a prompt engineer. I want to be um, I want to do computers. I want to be a computer scientist and go into this role. I think what I see is the best thing you can do is take the skills that you've got and apply that and just get started into a career or get that started. Um, it may start off in a support role. It may start off in a training role. It may start off in an internship in a startup. It may not be ideally what you set out to do, but coming back into the roles, as you gain experience or as you traverse from role to role, this is where those transferable skills become important. That allows you to move from role to role. So I think coming back to like even those hackathon concept, ideas are useless. Execution is everything. The best thing that I can say is just get started in your career and then iterate and iterate is probably the best thing you can do.
So our students keep on participating in hackathons as well. So we
Yeah,
keep on organizing these kinds of technical fairs so that students can develop their skills.
and that's fantastic.
Yes, sir. We are providing each and every opportunity to our students to develop technically. Dear students, if you have any more questions, you can ask, you can write in the chat. So, sir, I think there are no more questions.
Yeah, there's
One more
lots of
question.
questions. Yeah, there's
One
lots of
more.
questions. I'm just trying to yeah. So what are some limitations of your favorite programming language and what are they and why? Yeah, favorite is an interesting concept. I think initially my favorite language, I suppose favorite probably came through, uh, I think probably at a point in time. So Java was definitely a favorite language, but I suppose favorite came into, I did a lot of work in it. I became very proficient. Um, the frameworks around that, I I used a lot of Java frameworks all over the place. I did quite well. That's where I let my DevOps journey. Um, but the limitations of that was there's only a certain group that use that language. And when I moved into more the data science or doing data engineering, there's a lot of other languages. So nowadays, I'm probably doing more stuff in Python than ever before. So would I say that would be my favorite language? Maybe not. I like the syntax. I like the way the JVMs work. Um, but in terms of where it is now, it does actually limit the kinds of places and the kinds of technologies and problems I solve because of the where it gets mostly used. So I don't see a lot of Java being used in machine learning, even though there are some frameworks, but the support around um, how to use that, it is a varied set of use cases. So I might just leave it there.
So, sir, now there are no more questions. So, even if there are any more questions, I will send all those questions on your chat so that you can answer them afterwards. If there is
Yeah.
some particular questions, we'll share with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And the students are very much excited about your sessions. That's the reason they're asking a lot of questions, sir. So the session was very good. Thank you so much, sir. And I, on behalf of the entire WCTM family, extend my sincere gratitude to you for delivering such an insightful session. My pleasure, sir.
Thank
Your
you so
talk,
much.
your talk gave us a deeper understanding on how artificial intelligence is transforming the way we live, work, and collaborate. The way you connected your personal journey from witnessing the rise of the internet to embracing today's AI revolution is truly inspiring, sir. And we can relate to it as well. We especially appreciate the practical advice that you have shared on how engineers can adapt, stay relevant, and build successful careers in this new era. Your emphasis on continuous learning, embracing change, and developing both technical and soft skills has left a lasting impression on all of us. Once again, sir, thank you so much, and we look forward from learning from you in near future as well. So, thank you once again, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dolly, for reaching out.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Have
sir.
a good afternoon.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello, dear students. So today we have ended the session. From tomorrow, the session will begin at 9:45 a.m. And tomorrow we are having very good speakers. We have Mr. Ripunjay Gautam. He's director KPMG and he is an ex-employee of PwC India. Then the second session is from Ishita Singh ma'am. She is senior HR manager, Planet Spark. Third is from Mr. Bogdan. He's a team lead development at AI Biz company, Romania. And next session would be from Miss Mary Prakash. She's an HR from Exicom. So tomorrow also we are having very good speakers. So I request everyone to join the tomorrow session at 9:45 a.m. If you have any questions, you can write down in the chat. Yes students, यहाँ पे फ्रेशर पार्टी भी होती है, ओरिएंटेशन पार्टी भी होगी आपकी. See, for tomorrow session, this will start at 9:45 a.m. You have to join at 9:45, and it will last. The last session will end at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Guys, the college timing is 9:30 a.m. to 3:20 p.m. On 15, you can come in smart casuals. We are working on the groups. Some groups have already been formed. सिर्फ मंडे को आपको यूनिफॉर्म में आना होता है. उसके अलावा जब भी हमारा कोई फॉर्मल इवेंट होता है तब आपको यूनिफॉर्म में आना होता है. अदरवाइज आप स्मार्ट कैजुअल्स में आ सकते हो. सेशंस कैसे थे गाइस? ऑल वर गुड? यू एंजॉयड अ लॉट? यू लर्नड अ लॉट? That's the spirit, guys. Keep learning. So we end our session today. Thank you so much, guys, for listening so patiently. Yes, we are all excited to have you in our campus on 15th. We all are also excited. बेटा यूनिफॉर्म नहीं मिलती है. यूनिफॉर्म आपके पास जो भी व्हाइट शर्ट है, ब्लैक ट्राउजर, आप वो पहन सकते हो. Okay, students, now